With us today is Robyn Afrik. Robyn is the new Director for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in Ottawa County, Michigan. This wife and mother of three joins us to share her personal journey as well as what local government can do to make sure everyone is included. Robyn, welcome to Feel Like You Belong.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So you are not originally from West Michigan. Tell our viewers how you got here.
Yeah, so I was actually born in Seoul, Korea, and I was actually adopted and brought here at 6 months of age to Holland, Michigan. So I grew up my whole life there, and yeah, I have family there and went to school there, so that's pretty much home.
Which pretty much explains your flawless Midwest English.
Yes, right? No accent.
No. Well, if you go to California or New York, they'll say you have an accent.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's
locally
true.
here, yeah, you're a local indeed.
Yeah.
So talk about, so eventually we're going to talk about your new job, which is so exciting, and just really thrilled to hear about this, and just was delighted to hear that you had gotten this new job, which is wonderful for Ottawa County. But growing up as a racial minority in fairly white West Michigan probably informed some of what you do today. Talk a little bit about your growing up and maybe some of that discomfort or, you know.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the time that I grew up, obviously it was in the early 70s, so that might predate me a little, but there were some waves of adoptees, I think, that were more common, especially in the Midwest, and then of course in Michigan. I know that for my family, who they identify as German Dutch, I guess you could say,
Sure.
they have generations here.
A lot of that going on in this area.
Right. I didn't get to choose, obviously, but that's the reality that I was in. And one of the things I remember growing up in the community that I have been in, if I ever saw primarily any minorities that were around me, they usually fell into three camps, and I could pretty well pick them out. It was usually individuals that were adoptees like me. The second group would be individuals that were what we would call right, wrong, or indifferent missions, because it was something that we would be working overseas with, or groups that would be local missions. So sometimes we'd go into the urban Chicagos or wherever it would be. That's what I remember seeing. And then the third group would be usually refugees. So that is the framework that I grew up in my life seeing and coming to understand, as far as when you talk about having diverse or different backgrounds around me. Those were the only camps that I experienced. So yes, those kinds of things absolutely shaped me, you know, because as a young girl of color, having to live and grow up in a predominantly white monocultural group, that was my frame of reference.
Yeah. What was your first awareness of race?
First awareness. I think when I was a little girl on the playground, I remember children pointing out the fact that my skin was obviously brown. They asked why my eyes were slanty, right? They would ask about why my hair was so dark. So I think just the kids bringing that to my attention. I think I might have known something as I passed by the mirror, but there was no words. Does that make sense? I had no words to really say what that was.
Yeah. Did you ask your parents about that?
I'm sure I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
This would be a good Thanksgiving conversation.
Right. Yeah. No, I have. I think as kids asked me, right, I probably brought that to their attention and said, you know, why do I look different, or why is that? So yeah.
And where did you end up going to school?
Went to Holland Christian, and then ended up going to Valparaiso University down in Indiana, so still Midwest. And
but a slight burst of diversity?
Oh, well, okay, so I'll qualify it.
Well, instead of Dutch Reformed, they're all Lutheran.
They were
down at
Lutheran,
Valpo.
right. And it was interesting because the year that I attended my freshman year, I recognized that there was a very high population of international students there. There was a gentleman who has become very close to our family, but he was the international student director. And he did an amazing job at recruiting students from all over the world. So I do remember being in the middle of this cornfield with one Dairy Queen the year I went, and just a whole group of international students being there. So,
And how did that feel?
Can I very honestly, I was not even in my college years fully awakened to understand how it should feel. To be very honest with you, I knew that they were there, but I couldn't identify. I didn't know how to make relationships or even to know what I should be doing, because I was not raised really around it, and I didn't really know what was normal, what wasn't normal.
You didn't know the questions to ask, maybe?
No, I mean, I knew they were there, but it didn't seem to be something that was a desire in me at the time to seek out.
Sure.
Yeah.
So your husband is also not from West Michigan. And how did the two of you meet?
So that's the interesting dynamic. We met at college. He was one of the international students.
Okay.
So,
And for our viewers who don't know, Tayo is from?
Originally from Sierra Leone, but grew up in Senegal.
Okay.
So their family does celebrate both cultures and languages, and yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the majority of Senegalese are Muslim. So which tradition did he grow up in?
So his mother, let me get this right. I think his father was Methodist. His mother grew up Catholic/Christian. But her mother is Muslim. I do know that because we visited. So yeah. Yep.
Okay. And so you met in college, as
we did.
As many people do, and fall in love?
Yes. I've shared this story multiple times, I think, publicly, so it's not a secret, but I know the moment that changed for me in wanting to interact with the international student body was we had the KKK actually came to visit our town that our college was in, and I remember having...
And Valparaiso is not a big city, right?
It's not, no. But there was on the courthouse steps downtown in Valparaiso, we had heard that they were coming. And so there was a lot of my girlfriends who we all knew it was wrong. So we were actually going to be the protesters, right, to go and stop that. But due to my experience with them, something happened to me where I had kind of this, I don't want to say epiphany or awakening, but it started me down this path of, oh my goodness, I am a person of color. And I think I didn't understand what that meant. And so in then seeking out individuals who did, right, look different than me, my husband was part of that journey. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah. And you have 3 amazing kids. Hardly kids anymore. They're tall and all driving and.
Oh, they're all adulting.
But so talk about the challenge of raising children of color.
It's raising. So I think raising children in general is all a challenge.
True.
And I think we did choose to come back to West Michigan, partially due to the fact that my family was here, and so raising kids.
Support is good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Free babysitting is good.
Yes, don't put that on camera. Just kidding. And so yes, I think raising children of color in, again, a predominantly monocultural space and a known space for me, definitely I had to undo a lot of my old thinking. I don't know if that makes sense, right? So things that my husband would encounter, I wouldn't even think twice about because I was not raised as a woman of color. And now he was experiencing things and I had to check myself, and then of course for our kids. So I had to do a lot of undoing also to be supportive of both him and my kids.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And you, for quite a while, were working in the nonprofit world.
Yeah, I think, doesn't everybody do that? No, I'm kidding, I shouldn't say that.
And I mean, which actually goes to speak to, I think, your personal compassion and commitment to doing good things, community, and helping do good things in the world. And then just very recently, you got this wonderful job from Ottawa County. Talk about what you're doing and just the tip of the hat to your boss.
Yeah, Al. Yeah. No. So yes, working in nonprofit. I also had a stint in corporate. But interestingly enough, Al and I had done a lot of diversity, equity, inclusion work around the country, actually, in parallel with what I call a traditional 8-to-5 job. And most of it stemmed from what I just shared with you, my story, my experiences, and the different things that people were asking me to come out and either consult, teach, etc. So the Ottawa County, first time ever, they had developed and approved, the commissioners approved this office, actually December 2018. And then they approved funding for staffing to come on board a couple months later. And then in June, here I am. So yeah, I've been here maybe 5 months, not too long.
Which speaks well to the leadership in the county.
Of course.
And, you know, through no fault of their own, their majority population is who they are. But, you know, that there's this movement towards, hey, how can we be more inclusive? And so exciting news for Holland, Michigan, and indeed the whole county. Talk about your job. What are some of the projects you're undertaking? You're exhausted because you just had a huge summit. Tell us about the summit and then and some projects you're taking on.
So very quickly, just to reiterate, I mean, Ottawa County has a vision, and it's very interesting because I look at your slogan, feel like you belong. Ours is where you belong. And so part of making sure that any individual who comes to our community or who's currently in our community understands what belonging is, and so according to them. And so one of the things we just launched was the 4th Annual Diversity Forum, and it's not new to the county per se, it's always been there, but we had a whole new shift of focus. We brought in the first racial equity officer from the state of Michigan, Washtenaw, Kent, GR, because they've been doing this work. And we had multiple government sectors, elected officials, and individuals who are public servants to come in and really get involved in this dialogue, right? And also we had people that were not just from government sectors, because we know that DEI work is for everyone.
Sure.
So really quick, 3 things that we're going after. One is to create a countywide strategy around diversity, equity, inclusion. We have to understand currently what we are doing well and according to who, and figure out what our key priorities will be moving forward. I'll be partnering with a lot of our local municipalities and cities and townships to see how we can continue doing that work as well. And then removing implicit bias from our current policies, procedures, and programs. So that's going to be some interesting work, but we're partnering with GARE, which is a national organization that really helps support government to be able to do it. The Government for Race and Equity. So they really are big on trying to figure out how we can look at systems and what we're doing when we deliver our services. So yeah.
So how do you track that? What metrics do you use? If we could get
I mean, no, it's okay. I mean, they have a way of it's kind of like what they call a implicit bias template. And again, you can customize some of that, but the key thing is to make sure that when you bring people together at a table and you're determining who is really benefiting from that product or that service, how many, who's at the table when making those decisions, right? There's a whole entire system that we go through to make sure the end product is free of that bias. So I think there's a couple of metrics, right? How many templates can you actually get done and actually use through your services, but also then to measure the difference of who actually benefited and what were those services provided. So
sure.
Yeah.
So if people are interested in your work, how do they get a hold of you? How do they get hold of your office?
Oh my goodness.
What's the best contact information that we could put at the bottom of the screen?
You know, so I just, if you go to the Ottawa County website, we actually have a diversity, equity, inclusion webpage, and all of my contact information is there. Afrik at miottawa.org is my email.
Okay.
Yeah, so those are probably the two best. Yeah.
Well, I know there are going to be a bunch of people from Ottawa County and West Michigan watching this discussion.
Great.
So we're glad to refer those high-minded people your way, and continued success.
Yeah. Well,
in your personal journey and in getting those kids launched into the world,
right,
and being the amazing people that you and your husband raised them to be, but also in doing this really important work.
Thank you. It's an honor.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us. If you're watching us on TV, stay tuned for our following segments on language and culture. If you're watching Feel Like You Belong on the internet, we hope you will share your feedback with us via our website and YouTube channel. And be sure to catch our many other stories about the passionate leaders making our communities more inclusive spaces.